The war in the Middle East has broken out again in full force, and the American prospects have not improved. Trump does not rule out landings on the Iranian islands or even on the mainland itself, while U.S. ammunition supplies are running low and victory is becoming more distant. In this video, we will talk about what happened, why the fighting has broken out again, and what the prospects are, how things could continue at all, what chances of success the U.S. has. All of this here, in this situation, a report on the war with Iran. Save the most at Holy with my code. On June 19, 2026, a preliminary agreement was reached between Iran and the U.S. This was supposed to allow free passage through the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. certainly hoped that this would reopen the strait. Iran, from my point of view, never intended at any point to allow passage again without fees. That seems clear to me, because Iran explicitly stated that passage would be allowed for a limited time, during which Iran would cover the fees. Iran makes it clear that otherwise, fees will apply, which of course shows that Iran clearly intended from the beginning to maintain established control over the Strait of Hormuz by forcing the ships to use a corridor through Iranian territorial waters, where Iran can then charge a so-called service fee for providing security. But to do that, he has to force them to route the ships through Iranian territory, which costs something, and he tried to enforce this by launching airstrikes on ships that didn't use the corridor. On October 25th and 27th, in June, Iran attacked merchant ships that were following a route along the Omani coast, so here in the south, and would have been outside Iranian territorial waters. And until June, then after that the situation calmed down a bit. Also after there were brief American counterstrikes each time. But in July, the situation escalated again after he attacked merchant ships once more. That led the U.S. to begin larger airstrikes again on July 7th. And in the meantime, Trump's life was also threatened, which is why he had to switch to another Air Force One in Turkey a day later. Whether the threat to Trump was a reason for starting the hostilities, because Trump knew the Iranians wanted to kill him, or whether it was a result of the hostilities, can of course only be speculated. Since then, however, U.S. bombs have been dropping again, while Iran is firing back with rockets and drones. Interestingly, Iran is firing at everyone except Israel, fully aware that in Jerusalem they seem to be just waiting for a reason to get involved again. And the fact that Israel might not be so easily stopped by Trump this time is at least a possibility. It is definitely striking that Iran has practically attacked every country in the Middle East except Israel. High temperatures are always stressful for the body. To remain productive nonetheless, I naturally try to optimize my life. That also includes vitamins and minerals. I was initially hesitant about AG1. I first tested it for 5 months without promotion. Now I'm convinced and take it regularly, even when traveling. I don't want to go without it, so I specifically pack these little sachets in my luggage to make sure I can take my AG1 every day. It replaces up to 15 basic supplements such as vitamin C, A, B12 calcium, magnesium, zinc, and much more. I feel more productive, and since I started taking it, I've only been sick once. I used to say I haven't gotten sick since then. Well, I just had a moderate cold, but since November 2024, that's not too bad. And what's important, AG1 strictly forbids me from claiming in any way that it's because of AG1. It could be a coincidence, but at least I noticed it. The effectiveness of AG1 is supported by 4 clinical studies, and it's also certified by the Cologne List and Informed Sport. At drinkagone.com, you now get €20 off your first order, plus 5 AG1 travel packs for on the go, as well as a bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2 and the welcome kit for free. The subscription can be canceled or paused at any time. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it out without any risk and see if you're convinced. If not, just use the 30-day money-back guarantee and you won't have taken any financial risk. So you can try it out without any problem, and of course, you'll also be supporting the channel. But what is this really about? The core issue of the war is the question of who controls the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. wants to prevent Iranian control, which would be a geopolitical disaster for the U.S. because it would set a precedent. Iran knows that it has the chance to enforce this, to establish and maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz, because the US president has overreached and wants to get out of the war. Since then, since the fighting began, the US has mainly been targeting sites that threaten Iran's ability to disrupt shipping. That includes coastal radar, navigation devices, and other surveillance equipment, radar and drones, missile and drone depots, as well as their launch facilities, air defense systems, speedboats, and other maritime capabilities of the Revolutionary Guards, as well as command, communication, and logistics facilities of the Iranian Armed Forces and the Revolutionary Guards. In the first 3 days of the fighting, for example, the US attacked 300 targets. Meanwhile, there have been attacks for 11 consecutive nights. So, it's an ongoing air campaign. Some of the attacks were also directed at the Bandar Abbas bridges. So, the city in the south, this one here, which controls access to the Strait of Hormuz and is an important base for Iran's naval forces. But Iran's attacks on tankers are also continuing. Iran itself has responded to the attacks and attacked countries that support the US. In the process, local and civilian targets like power plants and desalination facilities in Kuwait were also struck. Meanwhile, the Kuwaitis report being attacked and having their desalination facilities targeted for 4 straight days. We have to understand that along the Persian Gulf, essential parts of the water supply now rely on desalination plants. In the south of the Persian Gulf, in some cases, up to 100% of the country's water supply comes from desalination plants. Such attacks are therefore extremely serious and, of course, pose significant risks to businesses. In the attacks, Iran also hit the Muwafaq Salty Air Base in Jordan. In doing so, it was able to cause severe damage and resulted in 2 fatalities. Here, we see hangars. As can be seen on satellite images, it was a direct hit that completely destroyed the hangar. This here is a barracks area, so a residential area. Inside here are usually the sleeping quarters for soldiers. We can see that there was heavy damage here as well, also a direct hit. And here again is a hangar that was hit. The Iranians say they damaged 2 drones here that were there. And here, a direct hit on one of the buildings. And we can see another one was damaged here as well. As mentioned, there were 2 fatalities. A 3rd fatality was in Iraq. A 3rd fatality occurred in Iraq while defusing an Iranian drone. In addition, there were over 100 wounded in the attacks. However, so far, 96% of them are back on duty. That's due to the impacts, the pressure, and so on. There were injuries, but for the most part, they have already recovered, so they were able to return to duty. Additionally, and this is remarkable, a significant number of helicopters have been damaged. Here, we have significant number. So, what is a significant number? 8, 10, 12. So 2 or 3 are definitely not a significant number. That is also remarkable. It could very well be a low double-digit number of helicopters. That's how I would interpret it at least. And if we look at how the Americans have reported damaged aircraft in this war in the past, some of them could have been total losses, at least in some cases. According to US officials, Iran has adapted to US defense measures and is firing missiles that fly at extremely high speeds and can begin to maneuver toward the ground and continue maneuvering during their flight. The capability, Iran's ability to hit sensitive targets, has also raised concerns that the regime is receiving targeting support from China or Russia, according to officials. So it's likely that China or Russia, or maybe even both, are helping Iran to cause greater damage. Of course, that's in the immediate interest of both. On the one hand, Russia can take revenge on the Americans for helping the Ukrainians hit high-value targets inside Russia, and China weakens the US in this way. Every day that war is being fought, the US uses up ammunition, and especially anti-aircraft missiles that they might need against China, which opens and further widens a window of opportunity for Chinese actions in this direction. Iran has also activated its proxies, and the Houthis have now imposed a blockade on Saudi Arabia. This is of great significance because the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia transports its oil via the Red Sea. So here in the south, on the western side of Saudi Arabia, the oil is now being transported out. It then goes through the Bab al-Mandab towards the east to deliver it to the customers. The Houthis control the northwestern part of Yemen, so they can threaten shipping there if it is put under pressure in this way and stopped accordingly. This threat is already starting to have an effect. So it can already be seen that several VLCCs, that is, very large crude carriers, very large oil tankers, have already changed their course and are moving away from the Strait to bring themselves to safety. That means, even if no attacks occur, this already has immediate consequences because it makes the oil supply more difficult again. But that's not all. Iran is believed to have brought centrifuges into Pig's Egg Mountain, according to Israel. Pig's Egg Mountain is a new underground facility for the nuclear program, which may be so deep underground that not even the GBU-57, those are the bombs that were used in the American attack last year, may not even be enough to destroy the facilities. So even here, from the Iranian side, there is actually hardly any reason to hold back now in their work on the nuclear program. What else is supposed to happen now? I mean, the Americans are already attacking, the Israelis have attacked in the past, and might attack again soon. What risk is there left to take now if you're working on nuclear weapons? The current development regarding the war, is that the war with Iran is the most unpopular conflict among Americans since polling began. There has never been, in the history of the USA, as proven by polls, a more unpopular war than the one Donald Trump is currently waging. The net approval for Trump's decision to attack Iran is now at minus 30% among Americans. So 30% more people oppose the decision than support it. The Vietnam War took 6 years to become just as hated, while the Iran War managed it in only 6 months. U.S. intelligence agencies also believe that the attacks will not lead to any change in behavior by Iran. That shouldn't really come as a surprise if you've been following the conflict. And that's also what we've discussed here on the channel. And now, it's actually Tasnim, which is the mouthpiece of the Revolutionary Guards, a media outlet in Iran. They published an analysis on how best to assassinate Trump, making it appealing to potential attackers. In doing so, they analyzed the route he usually takes, for example, from Mar-a-Lago to the airport, and they point out vulnerabilities in that movement pattern. They describe what the motorcade looks like that he travels with, in order to make attacks easier. So here we see that Iran's intention to kill Trump is explicitly stated. And with this approach, of course, they also hope to make it easier for lone actors to carry this out. Not least for that reason, and also because of the casualties, the U.S. government is considering escalating the war. And we have a quote on this. The U.S. is planning a full-scale war, said a U.S. official familiar with the government's internal discussions, adding that the Pentagon is increasing the number of military aircraft in the region. The official, who wished to remain anonymous because he was not authorized to speak to the media, however, he warned that the expansion of U.S. operations would be limited by dwindling stocks of aircraft, air defense systems, and long-range munitions, as well as by restrictions on sending additional troops and aircraft to the area due to combat damage. We don't have enough to safely sustain operations, and I don't think the White House is aware of that, the official said. Military spokesmen have stated that the U.S. is not only struggling with losses in equipment and ammunition supplies, but is also unprepared for possible ground operations in Iran, which Trump did not want to rule out last week. I think it's a mistake to deploy ground troops anywhere on the islands in the Strait or on the mainland, said Seth Jones, head of the Defense and Security Division at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. I don't think the U.S. forces are prepared for long-range attacks from the Iranians. Iran has now declared the Memorandum of Understanding null and void. So basically, they're saying the negotiations were for nothing. And if there are any negotiations at all, they would have to start from scratch. And it currently seems unrealistic that Iran will agree to a deal again anytime soon. Militarily, they won't be forced to back down for the foreseeable future. It seems to me there's no way the U.S. could force Iran to back down just with bombings. And even an invasion of islands or a coastal city wouldn't fundamentally change that. Except that, of course, there would be American casualties from ground fighting and from drones and missiles. Missile attacks on American troops, which would make the war even more unpopular. In my view, the only chance the U.S. would have is an economic blockade. But for that, they need patience, to hold out for months, and at the same time, the ability to fend off Iranian attacks on U.S. bases and civilian targets in the Gulf. That means the US would have to be willing to accept that there will be high oil prices worldwide for months, and that allied countries will have problems getting oil for months, while there may continue to be fighting. Further Iranian attacks, and that seems unlikely given the upcoming midterm elections in the US, which in turn means that the chances of the US winning this war are actually worse than they were before. At least, that's what you would expect. Ian Bremmer, the American political scientist, said it's better to lose a war now than in 6 years. Or he meant, in a tweet of his, that it's better to lose a war after 6 months than after 6 years. There seems to be little to suggest, especially for the US, that they could win this war. The question is, at least I don't see any scenario in which the US could win this war anytime soon, unless they want to starve out Iran in the long term, maybe occasionally targeted attacks, disabling Iran's alternative routes for exporting oil, or something similar. But whether Trump has the patience for that, and whether the US is willing to provide air defense missiles to stop the guaranteed ongoing Iranian attacks, is questionable. After all, why shouldn't Iran attack? That seems very doubtful at least. That's the situation report for now. If you liked it, a thumbs up is appreciated. The topic is serious, but I hope you enjoyed the summary and assessment. If you're new here, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss future videos. And if you have anything to add, please write it in the comment section. That's all for now from Torsten Heinrich. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. German time, we have the next Ukraine war situation report followed by a Q&A. You can also ask questions about this topic then. I hope to see you there. That's all from me. Thank you, and see you soon. Thanks also to the supporters on Patreon as well as here on YouTube. Special thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Mahamori, as well as to Lieutenant Robert Phil, Immelkopf, Floja, Capri, Burtonment, Lichtschatter, NTX, Malermeister, Nagel, Markus F., Alex Rosenthal, Matt Best, Mütter 1000 Janis G., Cunningham, Oistress, Finn, Fünffarb, Flecktarn, Jans vom Eck, Uwe Dufresne, Nickname to Bib, Karsten Schulz, Tequila 42. Thank you very much. Without you, this would not be possible.